Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. This film, Superman the movie, is the ghost that haunts anyone who's attempting to reinvigorate the character of Superman on film. And this ghost will be haunting James Gunn. But it's not just this ghost that's going to be haunting James Gunn. It's not only the Superman 78 nostalgia that's going to be haunting James, it's the issue with the Snyderverse as well. They brought back Henry Cavill, then changed their minds within a heartbeat, and that's angered a lot of fans. I understand the anger of the Henry Cavill fans who thought their Superman was returning, only to find out he wasn't. Now, me being quite an intelligently alert fellow, I kind of suspected that this may happen. And I think especially after the Black Adam movie failed at the global box office. But that's not really what I want to discuss today. It's very interesting. If you look to prior to the release of Superman Legacy, it's very similar to prior to the release of Superman the movie and Star Wars 77. Back then, there was a very humdrum set of films being made, very, obsessed with realism and the anti-hero. And people had enough of it. Also, there was a lot of references to former president, disgraced President Richard Nixon. And of course, in today's films, it's very realism-based and, real-world commentary-based. And they're all obsessed with making every iconic villain into Donald Trump. The only difference between Hollywood prior to the release of Superman Legacy and Superman the movie and Star Wars 78 is that today's movie fan has lost its innocence. But back in 77 and in 78, it was a very naive and innocent world, and they wanted to escape to a better world than they were entrapped in. And it's the same thing today. You go on social media, there's civil wars about this, there's civil wars about that. There's arguments about politics. If you want to talk about DC, there's the Snyderverse propaganda, there's the anti-Snyderverse propaganda. Where do you go for a bit of joy? And that's really what I want to talk about today, because James Gunn has been tasked in reintroducing Superman into a brand new franchise. Dick Donner was fortunate in a way where he didn't have anything historically. I mean, he did have George Reeves' Superman that was beloved, but it wasn't an expensive thing. It was a pioneering thing because it was made for the new medium of color television. And so it was a big deal at the time. So Dick Donner didn't have to worry about any nostalgia as such. And there was no Snyderverse fans going at him. So Dick Donner came in and, there were a couple, I think that there was a director before him tasked in making this movie, and it didn't work out. And he brought his good friend Tom Mankiewicz to rewrite the movie. And, Dick really believed in the love story between Clark, Superman, and Lois, and that was very, very important to him. But James Gunn isn't just reintroducing Superman. He's using Superman Legacy to introduce a brand new universe. And this is such a big task for James Gunn, who hasn't the hugest of CVs, by the way. He's done 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies, one we haven't seen yet. He's done the zombie movie with Zack Snyder that Zack directed. He wrote a Scooby-Doo movie. He did the Suicide Squad. He did Peacemaker. But I don't think really his CV is that huge. And I suppose that's one thing he has in common with Dick Donner. I don't think Dick Donner's CV was that huge. And I think at the time people were questioning a horror movie director. He directed one horror movie, by the way, a really good horror movie, one of the best ever made, which was the first which was the first Omen movie starring Gregory Peck. Yeah, the late, great Gregory Peck. So one thing was on his side. he was used to working with big personalities because he was going to have big personalities on Superman the movie like Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman didn't want to shave off his tash, and Marlon Brando wanted Jor-El to look like a bagel. So, you know, these are big personalities, crazy people. And, you know, the reason that successful people can afford to be nuts is because they're successful. And ultimately, he was able to be this great motivator on the set. And Richard Donner pulled off one of the greatest feats of all time. He made the first blockbuster superhero movie. And this movie haunts everyone who attempts to readapt this character, because people have seen it done in a way which honors the actual myth. Now, you can love Man of Steel, but I wouldn't go as far as to say it honors the myth. Siegel and Schuster, who were still alive, which is a beautiful thing, when Superman the movie was released, actually presented Dick Donner with a Superman statue, and they cried. They loved the film so much. Imagine they created this thing for the little, you know, for comic books, for a page, you know, for a book, little books, right? Little magazines. And it ended up being this huge movie, and they loved it. It honored what Siegel and Schuster wanted to do. So James Gunn has got this real responsibility of reinvigorating the superhero genre, reinvigorating DC, and creating a brand new franchise. So it's a big responsibility. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's a foregone conclusion he's going to pull it off. I'm also not going to tell you he can't pull it off. But the industry now, and the industry prior to Superman the movie, was in exactly the same position, where people are begging Hollywood to allow them to escape. And it was the same thing back then. Gritty realism was the thing in cinemas, and Star Wars 77 and Superman 78 absolutely changed that. So it's a big task for James Gunn. The industry has gone to war with its own audience. The entertainment industry is a consumer business. I can tell you from experience, from working in a supermarket, the last thing you want to do is piss off your customers. I remember working on a deli counter from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. They would never give me any breaks. I ended up taking out my frustration with the customers. Surprise, surprise. That deli counter ended up closing down, and I was made redundant. And Hollywood are facing this situation as well. I mean, if you look at the Hulk TV series on streaming, the She-Hulk series, how they were abusing, according to them, trolls, but really they were abusing fans of She-Hulk, right? And they thought they were being clever. It's not a good idea to go to war with your own customers. And what happened, what the She-Hulk series showed, is that fandom menace are really getting to Kevin Feige personally. And I think that kind of bite back was from Kevin Feige. Never let them see you bleed. And Kevin Feige, you know, during Phase 4, got loads and loads of criticism. Now, was it right criticism, wrong criticism? I could be here all day trying to explain to you the problems with Phase 4. And it goes beyond, you know, representation and inclusion. There's a lot wrong with Phase 4. And also, I think Feige was always going to be under pressure after Endgame and after the Infinity Saga, because it excited so many people. You had to create something even bigger. And also, he didn't introduce Kang the Conqueror from the first MCU movie. And I think it's important to talk about Kang. It's important to say we've got something bigger than Thanos. But he didn't do that because of COVID. You know, I think Black Widow was the first MCU movie, which really didn't have much to do with anything going forward, apart from the new version of Black Widow they were introducing. So James Gunn has got a big job on his hands. He's fighting against the Snyderverse stands. Now, the Snyderverse stands wouldn't be going at him so much if it wasn't for the fact that they brought back Henry Cavill, and then James and Peter come in and decide to take him out of the equation. And as I said earlier, that has rightfully upset many, many people. So you've got this situation now where the Snyderverse are fighting still to restore the Snyderverse. And James Gunn's trying to set up this new thing. But things like this really hurt him. So he's removed Henry Cavill. He's confirmed his brother to be involved as Weasel. Now, I like Sean. I think Sean's a very, very talented fellow. He's very good at being behind your kind of CGI characters, and he's a really good performer. Obviously, he wouldn't be involved if he wasn't James's brother, but I like Sean. I don't have any personal gripes with Sean. But things like this kind of make the fans think, hang on a minute, you're employing your brother, you're employing your wife. Again, I like his wife. I think his wife is a talented lady. I think Jen is a talented lady. So I would never go at Jen because I don't think it's nice. I don't think it's nice to attack Jen. I think Jen is a good actor. So, the fans are thinking you got rid of Henry Cavill, but your wife, brother have got a job. That you're talking about keeping Ezra Miller potentially and Zachary Levi, who's being, talking about COVID vaccines and things like that. And what Ezra did was even worse. So people are asking the question, is this fair? So I can understand that, but there's ways and means you go about this, and calling the man a child abuser isn't the way to do it. Short Circuit, I hope Gunn can deliver. Well, that's a good thing you wrote down there, Short Circuit, because nobody knows if he can deliver. Because Short Circuit, this is a very difficult gig. Because I said earlier, Dick Donner, when he was doing Superman the movie, was in a good position where he was just setting up Superman. He wasn't setting up a franchise, but him and Tom Mankiewicz, who rewrote Superman the movie, had plans for Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4, Superman 5, and a Supergirl movie. They were planning a franchise. Dick Donner trained Jeff Johns and Kevin Feige. Dick Donner was a genius. I mean, we lost out when those idiots fired Dick Donner. And I think Dick Donner got more harshly dealt with than Zack Snyder ever did. Dick Donner got to make one movie that reinvigorated Hollywood, right, like Star Wars 77 did, and his reward was the SAG. Zack Snyder got to do Man of Steel, BVS, and the Snyder Cut, right? That Justice League film had been made. It hadn't been put together yet, but he got to shoot all his shots, right? Dick didn't get any of that. And I think Dick would have made a successful DC franchise in the 70s and 80s. And I think that's what he was planning. But that wasn't his job. And he was under no pressure. Back then, people weren't saying, oh, DC keeps on failing. Oh, they can't get Superman right. Superman was dying a death in the comics. People were starting to think he was the agent of Uncle Sam, and he wasn't as fashionable as Batman was, and other characters were at the time. And Superman the movie certainly reinvigorated Superman. So in a lot of ways, Superman the movie did for Superman, I think, what Smallville did for Superman back in the early noughties. And I think James Gunn has got this responsibility, not only to reinvigorate Superman in one movie, but introduce a successful franchise, because people are watching. People are watching. There's people who want him to fail. There's people who want him to succeed. As a DC fan, I want him to succeed. I just don't know if it's possible to do it with all the histrionics. You're going into the Flash movie where you're going to take the DCEU and move on to a different timeline. These are huge things. You're not just burning down the DCEU. You're literally saying we're jumping from one thing to the other. So in a lot of ways, the DCEU will always be canon to the DCU, in a way, because it's there. They jump from the DCEU to the DCU. So this is a huge thing to do. Now, as I say, I like the slate so far, but it's just a slate. It's just a slate. I'm not going to start calling success already. But he's trying to plan it out. They're trying to plan it out. They're trying to do the right things. But they've got so many things riding against them. That's why I said from the beginning, it was the best way forward was to start from scratch. But clearly, because of studio politics, he wasn't able to do it. I don't think for 1 minute James Gunn would have chose to, use the DCEU as a timeline jumper. I think if he had the opportunity, he just would have started from scratch. But I do feel the DCU is something as fresh, as fresh as he can do. And so, you've got the ghost of this movie. you got the ghost of this movie, Superman the movie, which I remember watching as a child. Me and my brother were like this, watching Superman the movie. I can't even remember the special effects in Superman the movie. Do you know what I remember from Superman the movie? I remember Lois Lane, and I remember the romance, and I remember him, being Superman and being great and being, being so invigorated by this character and this film. It looked amazing. When we were kids, we had 3 channels, right? I first watched Superman the movie on TV. I mean, my parents didn't take us to cinemas when we were young. I mean, the first time I went to cinema was to see Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and that was because my older cousin took us. But yeah, we didn't really go to the cinema, but we sat there, me and my brother, with my dad, and it was a very exciting evening. I didn't really know much about Superman before that movie. So, that movie changed everything for me. It just opened up a realm of possibilities, and it did for so many people. And because there's so much history behind Superman now, because there's been so many failed live action attempts, it's very different to what it was back then. Back then, they were making a Superman film. It was very ambitious. People were very happy with what they got. There wasn't huge expectations. People were very, very excited that this was happening. And, Hollywood didn't really even believe in superheroes then. It was, and I mean, these guys, the Salkinds, you've got to give it to them. To decide to make 2 Superman movies back to back wasn't the dumb thing back then. But Elia Salkind saw the potential in making a Superman movie, because nobody else did. WB owned the whole of the DC, DC IP, and didn't do anything with it in terms of movies and the theatrical system. And Elia and his father Alexander had already made a Three Musketeers movie, which was very, very successful with Richard Lester. So, it was a very ambitious thing to do from the very beginning. This wasn't really a WB production. WB were handling the American and international distribution, but the Salkinds were actually producing that movie. So very different to what DC is today, which it's all owned by WB, and they make the big decisions. And, we can keep on talking about the past. But so James Gunn is under intense pressure to make this work. So Short Circuit says, I hope Gunn can deliver. I hope he can deliver, but it's a very difficult situation because he's got to reinvigorate the superhero genre like basically the MCU did with Iron Man and the first Avengers films. And there's going to be so many comparisons. This was the beautiful thing about Superman the movie. What do you compare it to? In 1978, apart from the George Reeves series from the 60s, which people loved, but it was a low budget, it was low production values, there was Superman matinees, but there was nothing, when you see this movie, it's just the best thing you've ever seen, right? Obviously, equally as good as Star Wars. Star Wars was class, but Sir James Gunn is under huge pressure. He's taken on a big gig. This is a potential career killer because everyone who's tried to do this has failed and failed miserably. Waz007, hi everyone, good morning Waz, and welcome to the DC Universe Daily, where we're talking about James Gunn having a huge job on his hands with this Superman movie and setting out this live action DC universe. It's a huge job. It's a huge job, and we're going to have to, the decisions he makes cannot be controversial. He really has to make decisions that work for the audience. And, we know where Hollywood is today. We know, look, I'm not a fan of race swapping, but I tell you what, Denzel Washington would be a great Lex Luthor. Denzel Washington, if we're gonna race swap characters, at least do it with iconic, actors of color like Denzel. Denzel would be a great Lex Luthor. He would absolutely kill that role. I was thinking about this last night before I went to bed. I thought Denzel Washington would fucking kill the role of Lex Luthor. Not kill in a bad way, but in a good way. So I'd be happy with that. So we'll see who is cast as Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor will be in Superman Legacy, especially considering it's, you know, inspired by All-Star Superman, and Lex Luthor is in All-Star Superman. You can't do a Superman movie without Lex Luthor, in my opinion. And I think Man of Steel would have been a little bit better if Lex Luthor was in the background of that movie and he showed up in a couple of scenes. It would have been fun, but they decided to wait because they didn't know they were doing a BVS at that time. They didn't know what they would do with a BV with a sequel, because originally they were going to do a Man of Steel sequel straight after Man of Steel, and when the box office didn't hit as high as they wanted it to, they said, let's just throw Batman in there. And how did that work out for them? Not too well at the end of the day. It's all about, as I keep on saying, it's all about execution. So Superman Legacy is about execution. I speak to a lot of fans on here, on Twitter. I know what they want. They want to see the kind of DC they saw in Bruce Timm's animation. They want to see what these DC characters are in the comic books. But the problem is, of course, there's so many comic books. Which comic books? Everyone kind of loves Superman from different comics. Whereas 007, I wish that Man of Steel 2 before BVS. Yes, so do I. Should have happened. And they shouldn't have been reactive. And if that happened, I think it would have been, well, I'm not sure if it would have been a better result. Still could have been controversial, but just throwing Batman in there was a mistake. Yusuf Al-Jawan, he let Jason Momoa too play Lobo. Look at him. He's Lobo. Yeah, I mean, look, the Lobo thing, I like Lobo. I mean, I liked Lobo in the Krypton series. I think that was kind of interesting, and it's a shame that show was cancelled. I do like Lobo. I don't know about Jason. Look, I don't know if Jason Momoa is playing Lobo or not. He's kind of hinted he's playing Lobo and continuing to play Aquaman. I don't mind Jason as Aquaman. I'm okay with that, but who knows? Who knows in the future? But I think he'd be a great Lobo. I think, why not? I mean, I like to see fresh actors who haven't been given a chance in the industry. But, you know, Jason Momoa as Lobo would be a lot of fun. And if he's still going to play Aquaman, that means this is a multiversal universe. And other characters from the multiverse can come in and out, like Jason's Aquaman. And he can still play Lobo. I'm pretty sure that Lobo will be in Superman Legacy. And it's looking more and more likely that Jason Momoa will play him. Was 007, what about Tom Cruise as Lex? Nah. Not for me. Not for me. I'm not saying he can't do it. I mean, this is what I'm saying. I'm not a fan of race bending, but I think look, let me be straight with you. I think Denzel Washington will be a better Lex Luthor than Tom Cruise, because clearly Denzel Washington is a better actor. As I say, I'm not a fan of race bending, but if you are going to race bend, you may as well do it with someone like Denzel, who to me is an absolute acting icon. But who knows who they're going to choose? I mean, in a lot of stories, Lex Luthor's a lot older than Superman, so you may get an older Lex Luthor in this story, but who knows what direction James is going with Lex. I'm sure, it wouldn't surprise me if Lex Luthor is the first piece of casting we hear about. It's going to be a long build-up, a long process for Superman Legacy. I mean, you know, I think we're talking about just over 2 years until we see that film. So I think they've got plenty of time to set their stall out and make a really great movie. So there won't be any excuses. They've got time, and they're quite willing to change dates and delay movies if it means making the best movie that they can. I'm convinced that Superman Legacy will probably keep its date. It's the only film, it's the only thing they announced from what, as far as I can see, that's actually got a date. Superman Legacy is so important to them and important to James Gunn. And this is why he's going to be writing it and most probably going to be directing it as well. Was 007, Denzel Washington is a great choice for Lex. I mean, if you get Denzel in DCU, it's the biggest casting since Marlon Brando as Jor-El. That's how much of an icon Denzel Washington is. He's tremendous. Now, Denzel has avoided being involved in the superhero genre up to this point. So it'll be interesting. I think if he was given something that can really get his acting chops and motivations going, he would certainly do it. So even though even though it's not an origin story, I still expect someone to be cast as Jor-El, because I think Jor-El will be involved, when Superman goes to the fortress, because I assume there will be a Fortress of Solitude. I certainly hope there will be a Fortress of Solitude. Something we really missed out on in the Snyderverse and the extended DCEU. I think these are the things you need. Now, even Mario Puzo, he was the original writer of Superman the movie, but everything he did was rewritten by Tom Mankiewicz. But even he knew to add the Fortress of Solitude. The Fortress of Solitude is very, very important. And even in Smallville, when DC didn't allow them to introduce the fortress, they introduced the Kawachi Caves because they knew they needed something mystical that linked Clark to his heritage. And that was introduced in season 2. And I was like, full of respect that they did that. And so, yeah, you always need these things. You need a fortress. And Snyderverse fans are going to say, yeah, well, Jonathan Kent was his fortress. Yeah, I get it. It's clever, it's interesting, but I don't want Jonathan Kent being the Fortress of Solitude. I want a proper Fortress of Solitude. And I think, people debate the shorts, the red shorts or no trunks. That debate isn't important to me. I'd rather debate the fortress. And I'd say I need a Fortress of Solitude more than I need Superman, care about Superman wearing trunks or not wearing trunks. Waz 007, Denzel looks great for his age. Yeah, Denzel's great. Obviously, he did suffer with alcoholism for a long time in his career, and he got himself cleaned up. But yeah, Denzel's great. Denzel's an icon. Denzel is a legend. I mean, look, I grew up with his films, and I mean, the man's amazing. And I mean, if they could get him as Lex Luthor, I'd say, yeah, let's do this. Looks like my reception's a bit ropey. Now and again, I start talking weirdly. Sorry about that. But yeah, so it's a big responsibility for James Gunn. And, it's clear that they're betting everything on this Superman movie, not only to introduce Superman into this universe, but to actually set out this new universe. That's exciting because Superman is my favorite hero. Superman's my favorite fictional character. Superman the movie was the first film I ever saw. It's the reason I love entertainment. I love movies. And as a kid, I wanted to be Superman. And as an adult, I wanted to make Superman. I wanted to write and direct a Superman movie, which will never happen now. I don't have the talent to do that, but that's what it was for me growing up. Superman has always been very important to me, especially when I've been going through depression, when I'm feeling down about the world, when I've had money problems. Superman's been there to get me through. With Christopher Reeve or Tom Welling and Henry Cavill, Superman's always been there for me somehow. Well, as 007, what happens Superman reboot flop? You know what? Everyone keeps on asking me this, and it's like, it's an interesting question. I know why people are asking this, but it's like the automatic assumption that it's going to flop, right? This is a business. If it doesn't make money, they will and it depends how much it flops by, Waz 007. If it only makes 800 million and people start saying it's a flop, maybe that will be fine. If it makes 200 million and it's a disaster, I mean, Superman Returns had a disastrous box office of under 400 million. Man of Steel got just under 700 million, and that film kind of got a sequel with BVS, didn't it? So I think anything over 700 million will, I think, as long as these movies make 700 and over, they'll be fine. But of course, if it doesn't work, and obviously if the DCU reboot, if this franchise reboot doesn't work out, then obviously they will be in trouble, and this is why they're taking their time and they're trying to create something exciting. I don't think this is going to flop. I think people are hoping it's going to flop. I hear a lot of discussions about what if it flops, but I don't really think it's a discussion we need to have right now. I think with the slate we've got, and I think it should be something we're excited about. Now, if you want it to flop, that's fine. That's up to you. I don't. I'm a DC fan. I want this to be successful. I think thus far, I think it's a good plan. I don't care that Sean Gunn is going to keep his job. I don't care that Jen Holland will continue to be involved. I don't care that James's Suicide Squad actors will still be involved. These things don't trigger me. I understand why Henry Cavill fans are angry about that. But, you know, if I'd done a version of the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, I would keep them because I did them and I believe in them. He is recasting Superman because he's doing a 10-year. Now, if it's successful, it will go on for more than 10 years. Of course it will. But he's doing, you know, they're planning out a franchise for 10 years. So it has to be young. He wants him to be young. And as Dave Bautista says, this is a proper reboot with a younger cast. And I applaud this. This is actually good thinking. And as difficult as it is, I think ultimately recasting Superman was the right thing to do. Scott Edwards, what's up? What's up, Scott? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm assuming where you are in America, it is the evening. So, but good morning here from Cyprus. We have 4 viewers at the moment until one of you goes. I've got no likes at the moment. We are doing the DC Universe Daily Live. There's no DC news at the moment, but I'm talking about the big responsibility that James Gunn has and comparing it to the moment of the industry. It's very similar to what Richard Donner and George Lucas were involved in. The industry was about realism and anti-heroes, and it wasn't really fun to watch movies back in the 70s. And it's become the same. It's not really fun to watch movies anymore because it's all realism. It's all about social commentary. Where's the wonder? Where's the escapism? And this is what James Gunn needs to do. He needs to bring wonder and excitement back to the superhero genre because that's what we've lost. Scott Edwards might be appearing in The Flash Season 9. Well, what I heard this morning was that if The Flash Season 9 was 20 plus episodes, he would have done a crossover with Legends of Tomorrow. But what Eric Wallace said, because it's only 13 episodes, he can't do that. So at the moment, it doesn't look like we're going to see the Legends in The Flash. But that would have been the plan if it was a full 20 plus season, final season roster. So, yes, Scott, I don't think you're going to get that personally from what Eric Wallace has just said, just to give you on an update of that. But I'm sure The Flash final season will be very exciting. And, of course, we've got Superman and Lois Season 3. I need to complete Season 2. God, there's so much to watch, man. I can't keep up. Scott Edwards, he said they're still appearing in an episode. Well, I haven't read that myself, but we'll see. We will see, Scott, but they would have finished off Legends properly if they had a 20-episode roster, which they don't. But we will see. We will see. Yusuf Aljawan, Superman film should be PG, not R-rated. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Yusuf. You can have a PG in DC Universe, and you can do like, for example, Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Clark Kent, Black Superman, you know, which will be in Elseworlds. That can be R-rated because it's an Elseworlds movie, and that's fine. But if you're doing like DCU is really going to be for a family audience, or I would imagine so, predominantly because that's where the money is. It's interesting because Gunn's more, I'm not sure if Gunn is right for that audience, but we'll see. Because he does like toilet humor. James Gunn really, really likes toilet humor, doesn't he? Scott Edwards, I can send you the quote. No, it's okay, Scott. It's fine. I believe you. No need to send me. There's nothing to send it on because I don't have access to my Twitter right now. I use my laptop to go on Twitter. I'm using my laptop to be on this video. My phone's been broken for months. I'm using a shitty old tablet that freezes whatever, even when I breathe on it. So there's not, but I believe you. We will see. We will see what happens. But I agree with you, Yusuf, there. But I think the Black Superman movie could be R-rated over on DC Elseworlds. So what happens with a DCU and a DC Elseworlds? You can have the best of both worlds. So as I keep on repeatedly saying, the planning looks good thus far, but the responsibility is huge. James has taken on a huge responsibility, not with DCU, but with Superman. He's made the decision to write and most probably direct the Superman film. And this is huge. And he can't afford to get this wrong. And he's put himself under more pressure by replacing Henry with a younger actor. So when he announces eventually, not now, but when he announces the casting for Superman, it better be something that everyone says, yeah, we like this. If it's controversial, he's going to be under so much pressure. Scott Edwards, he said they've turned what would have been episode 200 and turned it into the series finale. Interesting. So, yeah, look, it's a bit of a messy situation, if you ask me, Scott, because clearly with the sale of the CW, and something that you need to know, Scott, that it was confirmed that the CW never made any profit whatsoever. And the old leadership thought that was okay, but Zaslav came in and said, we're selling the CW. So the Arrowverse is dead, basically. Long live the Arrowverse after Flash season 9. That is the conclusion of Arrowverse. That is the end. It's gone on. I mean, look, it's gone on for a long time. If you add all the seasons of Arrowverse, that's quadruple the amount of seasons that Smallville went on for. So, yeah, it's got to end somehow. Scott Edwards, man, the plans for season 10 sounded awesome. Yeah, I did read that. Some of those plans did sound very, very interesting. But unfortunately, they don't have a platform. Their platform was the CW. The CW's been sold. And WB have decided, basically, they want a one-universe DCU. And they don't want, this is what James Gunn said. We want it all as much as possible connected. Now, the Arrowverse could have been part of DC Elseworlds, but they don't want to do that. They don't want to continue with Arrowverse. But for me personally, I think you've had so many seasons of so many Arrowverse shows. Fair's fair, right? It had to end sometime. And let's hope James Gunn can reinvigorate the DC universe and reinvigorate the superhero genre as well. And that's the responsibility he has. I mean, his responsibility is to make DC great, and it's difficult. Waz 007, Arrowverse was better than DCEU. Let's talk about that for a minute. That's an interesting one. I think that Arrow season 1 and 2 and The Flash season 1 and 2 were absolutely fantastic. And I think they're better than anything we've mostly seen in the DCEU as a franchise. I also think The Legends of Tomorrow at first was a great idea and it was okay and solid. But then it became something else that I just couldn't watch any longer. I liked the Supergirl, the first season of Supergirl. I thought it was okay. Now, I was very excited. I love Supergirl. I've always loved Supergirl. I thought Mel did a great job herself. The Red Tornado episode, I thought that was the best performance. That was amazing. Black Lightning. So I think when you look at Arrowverse, at least it tried to create an interconnected franchise, and they did that better, you're right, than the DC Extended Universe. And I think Smallville, definitely, for me, is even better than Arrowverse because it earned, in the early seasons, it earned the right to become a superhero show later on. It built out its own Justice League. We had the JSA. We had Amanda Waller. We had Lois Lane. We had Connor Kent. You name it, they had it. We had an Impulse, the version of The Flash. Amazing. Why is 007? You watched The Legend of Tomorrow. I used to watch it. You saying you used to watch it as well. I watched it at the beginning. I thought it was okay. I think once Rick, was it not Rick? The captain. I forgot the name of the captain. But once they got rid of the captain, I started to get a bit bored of it. But I think it was, ultimately, I think it was a good show. It just, in the end, wasn't for me. But I think Arrowverse at least created something connected and exciting. And it does have a lot of achievements. Unfortunately, the kind of people who were running it, it went a certain political direction, and it wasn't for me because they really were over elaboration and what they were attempting to do. Because that's the problem with progressive entertainment. It really tries these days to hit you over the head, and it was a bit too much for me. Scott Edwards, I think Eric Wallace meant you won't see the Legends cliffhanger resolved off screen. You might get like a 1-2 lines off screen resolution when they appear. Well, we don't know, Scott. That's you making an assumption there, but I don't know what they're going to do. If they've even got enough time to deal with Legends, even if they appear in one episode, I don't know how they're going to do it. If they're going to be able to do anything, it will be interesting. But I think the most important thing for Eric Wallace is to end the Flash's run in the right way. And for me personally, that's more important than crossovers or Legends or anything else. The Flash was one of the founders of the Arrowverse, and he deserves, and Grant deserves, for his story to be finished in the right way. And over saturating things with crossovers isn't the right thing to do in terms of the Flash character, and that's my opinion. There's more to, superhero stories than crossovers. Waz 007, Arrowverse had embargo, so not use DC characters. The question, Ted Cole, Blue Beetle, and other. I mean, it's interesting. We had a Blue Beetle in Smallville, didn't we? Very well done. We only saw him for one episode, but that was cool. We had a Booster Gold in the same episode as well. And so Smallville did a lot, and I think Smallville did most of the stuff, DC stuff, really, really well. But yeah, you're right, Waz. I think they did try and create, I think they did a better job of an interconnected universe on a lower budget than the DCEU. But the DCEU under Snyder wasn't really interested in a lot of that. It was trying to tell a 5-movie arc. And listen, that's something I think you can do in an Elseworlds, but what they were attempting to do was never going to work. And it didn't work, surprise, surprise. It divided the audience. You don't want to divide your audience. You want to unite your audience. And that's the problem with entertainment today. They are trying to divide. Everything's divisive, isn't it? Subverting expectations is one of the famous phrases of these people today. And the buck stops with the people in the industry because they are the problem. And they need to start entertaining us. That's their job. It's not to talk down to us, not to tell us off for being flawed human beings. That's not your job because you are even more flawed than we are. And so this is what James Gunn has to do. He needs to unite the audience. And if he can unite the audience with Superman Legacy, then he's got a leg up. Then he's winning. Then we're all winning. If Superman Legacy does well, I think we're all winning because I want to see a great Superman movie. Waz 007, I like Man of Steel, but don't like BVS, and Justice League was okay. Yeah, I love Man of Steel. I love BVS. I love the Snyder Cut. But what he was doing wasn't in the right place. It wasn't in the right place because people thought the whole idea was making kind of an interconnected universe, and Snyder had other plans. It was interconnected, but not done in the way like the general audience wanted. And where he was doing it, the general audience, were coming in, but in the end, it really hurt DC. Then they went in another direction, which never really worked, and the whole thing was a disaster, if you ask me. A disaster. So James Gunn is setting something up for the general audience, for the DC stand. This is what they're attempting to do. And is he capable of it? I don't know. It's a huge task. James Gunn has a huge task on his hands. And, the industry is in an interesting place, as it was before Superman the movie and Star Wars 77. George Lucas and Dick Donner reinvigorated the industry with what they've done. And that's what James Gunn needs to do. He needs to bring the excitement back to DC. Waz 007, Zack should direct Batman film. Never going to happen. I mean, who knows, but I doubt it. I don't think Zack Snyder will direct anything in DC Universe. Maybe he'll get something in the Elseworlds. That's unlikely as well. But he will not be anywhere near DC Universe. And if he was anywhere near DC Universe, I wouldn't even be able to stand up. I would be in so much shock. I think the conversation must now go beyond Zack Snyder. I like what he did, but obviously people, they know. DCU is supposed to be an interconnected franchise for the general audience, and the general audience, unfortunately, don't like Zack Snyder as a creative, and it's as simple as that. So we've got to move on from that now. But if they give him something in the Elseworlds, I'll be more than happy. We'll wait and see. We'll see what they do. I mean, there's lots of directors out there, more than Zack Snyder, more than James Gunn. Waz 007, so mean should Batman, not Superman? Sorry, Waz, I don't understand. So mean should Batman, not Superman? No, sorry, I don't understand what you're saying there. But yeah, there's a plan. There's a plan for a Superman movie, a Batman movie, a Supergirl movie. I think it's wonderful. I think the slate is very, very exciting. Now, whether or not, I mean, look, I don't know if James already knows who's going to be running all these different projects. It's interesting because we may have to wait a long time for Brave and the Bold if James is planning on writing and directing Brave and the Bold as well. So, like, is he going to write and direct Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, or is he going to give that film away to someone else? Wouldn't surprise me if he brings in Ava DuVernay to adapt Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And I'll tell you why. Ava DuVernay and Tom King were working on New Gods. Tom King was helping her write New Gods. So we'll see what happens there. Waz 007, sorry, I mean Zack direct Batman, not Superman. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. I'd be very, very surprised if Zack Snyder was to direct Superman Legacy. And the Hollywood Reporter, THR, believed that James Gunn is looking likely that he will direct Superman Legacy. And he's writing it. He's writing it anyway. So I'll be very surprised if he wanted to bring another director into that. I definitely think he's going to write and direct Superman Legacy. He's writing Superman Legacy. But I feel that he'll probably also write and direct Batman Brave and the Bold, because I think that's a very an important project. That's what I'm going to guess he's going to do. But I also think the group of kind of characters that he wants to bring in as well, I forgot what it was called. I think that's a film as well, and I think he may be doing that one as well. So I don't know how he's going to decide what he does and what he doesn't do. Waz 007, I hope James Gunn directs Superman reboot. It's looking likely. It's looking likely, Waz. It's looking like James will be doing that, but nothing's set in stone. It could be that he appoints someone else to direct it. It's an interesting situation, really, isn't it? Very interesting. I think if he, it's such an important film. It's part of his own vision. He's writing the movie. So I don't see why he would hand that off to someone else. But when you're in charge, when you're the showrunner of a franchise like this, he and Peter are running this thing. So you can't be everywhere at the same time. So I think this is a franchise where it doesn't chuck 5 or 6, 7 projects at you a year, but it's just going to take its time in the early days just to make sure it gets it right. Because I think the problems with Marvel started when they started having streaming shows as well as movies. And I don't think Marvel Studios have brought in more people to work in the studio to help with that. And it's been a problem. Waz 007, WBD are $3 billion in debt. They are, yes. And so they have to raise the money. So DC has to be successful. And they have to try and make other IPs that they can be successful as well. So it's a big job. It's a big job for Zaslav and James Gunn and Peter Safran. There's a big responsibility, but you've got to try it. You've got to try it. If you fail, you fail. You've got to try. And they're trying to reinvigorate DC. And some hard decisions have been made. People are not happy with the situation with Henry Cavill. I don't blame them because they brought him back. Then they decided to replace him. It's not a good look. It's very, very bad. I can't defend that. But all I can say, James Gunn came in after they brought him back, and he said, no, I don't want him. Waz 007, what happens? WBD can't pay debt. They can pay the debt. They can pay the debt. They're a huge company. They can pay the debt. We're talking about billion dollar companies. They will pay off one way or the other. They will raise that money. So yeah, that's not a concern. It's not even something that needs to be even discussed or thought about. They will pay that off. But they need to make money. This company hasn't made money. Hasn't made billion, it's not consistently making billion-dollar movies. That needs to change. And slowly but surely, if they start doing the right things, then they'll start making the money they need to make. So they'll pay the debt. They'll pay the debt. I'm not even, but obviously, and I don't think Warner Brothers Discovery are the only company kind of in that type of debt and in that type of trouble. I think it's all round in the industry. And part of that is because of the COVID pandemic. COVID Edwards, do you like the character of Hera Syndulla? I do. She's all right. Waz 007, I hope we get Nightwing film or TV show. Yeah, well, he has said, James Gunn, that he's looking to build out the Bat family. So I think we're definitely going to see Nightwing. We may even see a Nightwing in the Batman movie, and maybe that'll spin off to an HBO Max show, or maybe a movie. But yeah, I think we will see Nightwing. So yeah, definitely. So this is the DC Universe Daily, and I'm Mick, your host with the most, and we're talking DC today. And of course, in the evening when I come live, we can talk about anything you like in entertainment, but predominantly with the DC Universe Daily, we are talking DC. Why is 007? Do we see Joker in DCU? Very interesting. Matt Reeves introduced a kind of a Joker in his Batman movie. Do I think we'll see a Joker in the DC universe? We've got a Joker movie sequel coming. It's going to be interesting. I think we have to see a Joker eventually, but let's wait and see what they do about that. I think we will. Maybe not straight away, but I think we will see a Joker. I think he's so important, isn't it? I think, you know, I was discussing this last night. We really need to bring the fundamentals of what's important to all these DC characters. You know, the Fortress of Solitude, Jimmy Olsen, Nightwing, the Bat family, and I think that's what James is attempting to do. Scott Edwards, who should be the villain in The Brave and the Bold? It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Well, I think because Damian Wayne is officially, coming into this movie, and he's going to be the Robin in this movie and in this franchise, I think we're definitely going to be seeing Talia al Ghul and Ra's al Ghul. So the League of Shadows may be something to do with this film as well, I would imagine. Yusuf Al-Dizwan, he hired Ben Affleck to direct Batman Brave and the Bold. He hasn't hired him. Yet. He said he's been talking to Ben Affleck about doing something in DC Universe, directing something, but he hasn't appointed him. Let's not start spreading that one about Yusuf. There's nothing official yet. Scott Edwards, I think it was very important for James Gunn to announce new Superman and Batman projects for the DCU. Very important, because this is what David Zaslav discussed when he first did the merger. Before the merger, he said, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, our Holy Trinity, are going to be really important. What I don't want to see is a situation where they're just using Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman just so they can introduce other characters. I think all the characters need to be treated the same as each other. Whereas 007, if you're running DC Studio, how start off the universe? Well, that's the $1 million question. I've had lots of ideas in the past. You could start off with a Justice League movie, which introduces this DC universe. But I think that's what James is doing with Superman Legacy. He's using Superman Legacy to set out his stall and show us what this DC universe is, as well as setting up Superman. But there's so many things you can start with, Greg. I don't think there's a wrong way of starting it, as long as you can introduce the universe. Did Man of Steel do enough to introduce the DCEU in Man of Steel? No, I don't think it did. It did a couple of things, but I don't think it did enough. Scott Edwards, I care about the films more than the shows. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there will be animation, HBO Max shows, and gaming. I think the movies are the most important thing, and the streaming shows are kind of an addition to that. But Lanterns is very important on HBO Max. I want to see that. Paradise Lost is a very important show for Wonder Woman's future. I want to see that as well. So, obviously I'm a movie man, but I love television as well. I just think it's all very exciting. I'm just disappointed that I don't have access to HBO Max at this point. And let's see what it stays on HBO Max and what goes on other platforms. So I'll be very happy, for example, if Paradise Lost, The Penguin, the Lanterns all went onto Netflix, because I have access to Netflix. I don't have access to HBO Max. I don't necessarily want to be paying for another streaming service either. But Peacemaker came out on physical media, so I'm hoping James makes sure the other HBO stuff comes out on physical media. So if I have to wait for that stuff, like I do with the film sometimes. That's totally acceptable and totally fine. But for me, it's all very exciting. It's great. And I thought today we'd talk about, the big job he's got on his hands, because he has got a big job on his hands. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. This is a very ambitious thing he's setting out to do. You've got the nostalgia of Superman 78. You've got the Snyderverse stands against you. You've got so many things going against you. As well as the historical tweets, there's something that are going against him. So if he pulls this off, people have got to get, his name out of their mouths. So, you can just say, bloody hell, you took on an impossible task and you got it right. And we'll see if he can pull it off. I think there's a possibility he can pull this off. I think he has the talent and ability. But as I say, he doesn't have the biggest of CV, and he's never, ever done anything like this before. He's a writer-director. He's made films. He's never been in charge of something so bold and ambitious, being responsible for a whole universe, let alone the DC universe. As I said earlier, everybody is watching. So it's huge. It's huge. So I don't know if he feels pressure. I think we all feel pressure. But clearly, he said he couldn't turn down this opportunity. So he's got this opportunity, as has Peter. This is a partnership. Not many people talk about Peter Safran because he's behind the scenes, but I think he's a big part of this as well. Waz007, if I was running DC Studio, I start off with Batman storyline, Batman training Dick Grayson, become Robin, Clayface is, and Tony Zuko are bad guy. Interesting. I think you could start off with Batman. I don't think it's wrong to start off with Superman. I don't think it's wrong to start off with Batman. I don't think it's wrong to start off with Plastic Man. You can start with whoever you want, as long as you integrate your universe. So this won't just be a Superman film. This film will set out. This is the film. This is the first film in the new universe. So I think maybe we had this discussion last night. I'm starting to get the impression that maybe Blue Beetle, I don't know, because Blue Beetle and Aquaman Lost Kingdom are in a bit of a difficult position, because originally they were set in Walter Hamada's new timeline change. So it's interesting. How do they deal with that? How do they turn those films into standalone and pretend that they're still in the old universe? That's an interesting situation, isn't it? And I think maybe they'll say that the Blue Beetle movie and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom are still in the old universe. The Flash movie is still in the old universe. It sets up a new timeline at the end, and maybe we'll just see the Earth revolving at the end with a new, with the sun shining on it, and that will be the new timeline, and that'll be it until we get Superman Legacy. Because I don't see how you can make already set up films for another timeline into this new James Gunn and Peter Safran timeline. So that's interesting as well. So there's a lot of mystery at the moment. This year's movies are interesting for that fact. But as James has repeatedly said, it's after, his and Peter's sets of stuff starts after Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So, yeah, the Flash movie sets up a new universe, but what universe is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in, and Blue Beetle? So that's an interesting one. Yeah, a very interesting one. And we'll have to wait and see, because a lot of things have changed since I saw the Flash movie test screening. A lot of things have changed since I saw the Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom test screening. Things have changed. And I don't know what they've changed, what they've kept, how they can do this, because it is a bit complicated. But if they do pull all of this off this year, they've got a big chance. And the box offices are going to be very unpredictable for this year's movies. But I think once James Gunn gets involved with his stuff, I think there will be more hype and more excitement. Waz, my second film, Superman storyline, Superman versus Parasite. Yeah, Parasite would be a pretty good villain for Superman. He's a bit difficult to defeat. You always want to give Superman tough opponents. As I say, when I saw him beating the shit out of Steppenwolf, that just disappointed me, because it was far too easy and Superman was far too overpowered. And I just didn't like that. It just made Superman look like a bully in the end. So, and it didn't really work for me. But I do like the Snyder Cut in general. But yeah, you never want Superman either too overpowered or, opponents too easy to defeat. This has been Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you on tonight's live video, and I can't wait for that. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Waz 007, my third film, Wonder Woman reboot, storyline set in modern day. Now, I actually prefer Wonder Woman in the past, but hey, the full film, The Flash. Very good, Waz. I will see you later. Join me tonight as I'm live tonight, and we can continue and carry on this brilliant conversation. Until then, goodbye. Have a great day. It's time for a bacon sarnie and a cup of tea. See you soon. Laters.